Peace and respect to you all. Welcome, Megan Christ, and welcome to Demolished Doctrine, another show about the end of religiosity and superstition. And thank you once again coming in and sharing a little bit of your mind and your experience with us, Megan. Mine too. Really, I've enjoyed these conversations so far, guys. If you think this conversation is interesting tonight, we have covered a myriad, and that's no exaggeration, of topics that are spiritual related. And if you haven't seen the shows that we've done to this point and you find tonight's conversation interesting or thought-provoking or challenging in any way, go back and watch the rest of them, because they've all been like what you're going to see tonight. Because Megan and I are just having honest conversation about our experiences, what we believe is true in reality, what can be shown and what cannot be shown. Okay? So, Megan, hit it off, man. Tell them a little bit about yourself and we'll jump right in.
So this actually connects a lot to what we're going to talk about tonight. I had made a claim, let's say about 6 months ago now, that was based off a lot of things that happened to me when I was younger. Things I felt, things I heard, things I read, and it led me to this conclusion that I may be the Christ that was promised, and that it would reoccur again. It wouldn't be Jesus coming back. It would be a Christ which would incarnate through human beings. It's something I wrestled with for a long time. I tried to get past the ego parts of that, the fact that I think every young man with a dream and a taste for adventure might want to be a Christ at some point. I think we all have a God and Christ complex to an extent, whether we live that out in our lives, take an attempt at it, or we just live internal hero stories that we just kind of imagine in our daydreaming. There was something that felt deeper about it, and I felt like I was pushed way more by external forces. And so I took a shot at it with the hypothesis of maybe it's me, or maybe at least I make an example, because my other feeling is that we were all destined to be Christ, anointed by God, and that someone had to pop the bubble. And so I figured I might as well be me if I have the courage to go ahead and say it out loud. And so that's basically where I am now. It's led me to a bunch of different organizations, including TART, which is where Richard and I met. And so from there, Richard and I have taken the conversation a bit further, because I just felt like with theists and atheists, nothing against the ones I've come across, we haven't taken it to the next step. We always get stuck on a lot of the old doctrinal, dogmatic views, and we're not able to transcend those things the way Richard and I are. And so that's why I love sitting down with you, Rich, and you're the only person in the community I talk to anymore at this point, just because you're able to have really honest conversations, ask great questions, and I've been able to have that space to talk on that level with you, which has been great.
It's been great for me too. Okay, so to brief the watching audience and future viewers of this video, and I'm not saying I get a whole bunch of views on my channel, I don't. This is for very, very specific kind of brains and certain specific kinds of experiences, and most people would shrug this off or laugh. And I think that's mostly because it makes them uncomfortable and they're not always willing to admit their own experience. They don't want to admit it to themselves or to others. I am unapologetic. What I have experienced is what I have experienced. I can verify a lot of it. And although this sounds kind of silly, I do have a dipstick that I use in my brain to see if I've lost my mind yet, because how would I know without some kind of comparatives? So I've made those kind of comparatives, and I test my memory on a regular basis and my understanding of reality on a regular basis. In fact, you probably do the same thing all the time. Everyone who's watching this, everyone who's alive on this earth will always do things like lean in towards someone they know, raise up their eyebrows, and make a statement. And that's what that is. When you do that, is you're asking for social confirmation of what you're saying. For instance, you might lean in and say, "Did you see that red Camaro?" And you're just praying the other person says, "Yes."
Yeah.
I saw that red Camaro with the dog with a necklace, with a pearl necklace and a bandana. You know, that they saw the same thing you saw.
Yeah.
But we need to do that, because without verification from others, we can never actually verify our own reality. And you can tell when someone's going over the edge because they stop asking. You have someone who doesn't ask you about reality, they're probably already out there. They're leaving this plane of existence, man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on then. So I want to let you all know that Megan has decided that what we should talk about is that I use my experience and my knowledge of ancient religions to kind of troubleshoot the idea of Christ itself, the idea of a person being Christ, the idea of when that Christ is, and when that Christ would perform what is described in these ancient spiritual texts. And I use the term Christ very loosely, because as the Christians often ignore, what the Bible says about the Christ is he is the hero of the story. He is the Savior, but wears many crowns. That is to say, he wears many hats. So like saying he's not only Christ, he's also Thor, Buddha, Hercules, etc. All of these names actually mean a singular person who is to be the savior of the planet, telling the full truth. And that's the whole idea. So I'm going to be kind of rough on Megan tonight. Okay. Now that's not personal. That is because we need to harshly review these kinds of ideas and things that we hold true and really dig deep so that we can know whether or not it's actually true. And you're right, bro. You never get into these conversations with an atheist, because what they're going to do is they're going to attack the person they're talking to, or the source of the information. I mean, it's going to be an ad hom. It's going to be a genetic fallacy. It's going to be a straw man of the position. They're going to flip what you say upside down so it's not what you said, which I'm not saying they do these things on purpose. They just can't address the actual issue. And the actual issue is information, because no one can invent valid information. It already exists, and it's an observation. It's not a prescription. It's always a description.
Yeah, one of the big things I see atheists do, and like I said, this isn't every atheist on the planet, but as Richard and I were explaining, this is what we come across every single atheist. They'll refute everything in the scripture, but then they'll use the scriptural references to Christ and how you haven't fulfilled those things yet, as they've been interpreted, as the reason you're wrong. And I said, you can't do both. You can't refute all the scripture and then
yes, you can.
Well, yeah. Well,
you can. It's just illogical. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's what I get all the time, and it's like what you're saying is like, oh, it's over here. I'm mirrored. The context isn't in the right place because they're basing it off inaccurate interpretations of the scripture, and so you're fighting that. And like you said, then they ad hoc you, whether it's we'll turn water to wine right now, or, well, you're not perfect. You wear glasses. You smoke. You can't be the Christ. Nowhere in there, I don't remember any scripture saying, and the Christ will not smoke, and it'll have 20/20 vision. You know, like right from the beginning.
Weirdly enough.
Yeah. But even atheists will have this preconceived notion of exact qualities of what Christ is, and they're not using scripture, or they're misusing it. Right. So that's the thing I find a lot.
And as far as misusing scripture is concerned, for anyone who doesn't subscribe to the Christian Bible as being one of the truths, and you say Christians, or you say the Bible is wrong in reality. If you've ever said the Bible is wrong in reality or has no truth in it or something that means that, please consider the following. You consider Christians to be deeply biased, and you learned how to read that from Christians whom you consider deeply biased. So how would you know your reading frame is right? It's like me choosing a tutor for math who I know is bad at math. Guys, that makes no sense. Don't do that. It's self-defeating. Don't say Christians are idiots, I think I'll talk about how they read the Bible. Guys, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
You really can't do both. You've got to pick one of those. Either pick on the text or pick on the Christian, but don't say the Christian is the text. That makes no sense. Okay?
Yeah, and that's that fork in the road, right? Where you and I were basically atheists for a while. We took that fork in the road where we said, it doesn't make sense the way it was told to me, but now that I'm actually reading the text, I think I'm interpreting it a little better at this point. Maybe there's something to it, but I'm looking at it the wrong way. And then you finally go down that path. And I think that's why those atheists get converted back. They find God on their own terms. And they're like, wow, this was a personal journey. Wow, all these things were misinterpreted and they're incorrect. But the atheists can take one of those forks. They can either use the Christians they ridicule and their interpretation, or they can get back to zero and say, let me look at this with fresh eyes without anybody else's influence on me.
And I think what you just said either means that I never had the chance myself, or you're smarter than I am, because I was shown a reading frame to read it with.
Oh, yeah.
And the reading frame works really well. Okay. But I was shown that reading frame in a dreamlike state while I was awake. I had a waking dream, literally. And that's what showed me the reading frame. I didn't even make up the reading frame. I mean, it was information given to me that was applicable in reality. And when I applied it, it actually worked. Personally, I was an anti-theist who didn't care. That was my position. I literally didn't care. I had no interest in it. But anyway, okay, moving on then. So let's talk about what the text has to say about characters from within the text.
Okay.
Just generally. Okay, so the description of characters from within the text are often repeated. There are several descriptions of all the prophets, especially Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and also John. And no, I'm not repeating myself. And of course, there's a description of Christ. If I say something describing Christ and you say you feel that that's not accurate, if you would please tell me. Okay.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to make some bullet point statements.
Cool.
According to the biblical text. Okay. Christ knows the full truth about God. Objections?
See, I know that sounds arrogant, but I think I do.
No, it's fine. No, I'm just asking you if that's in the text.
Oh, if it's in the text.
Yes.
That I don't know, but you've said that before. If I do know that, it's because you told me. But as far as my own feeling,
well, that's kind of cheating, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So,
I'm just going to make some bullet point statements, and then we'll just take a common knowledge from this society view and discern from common knowledge, because I'll just use really common stuff.
Okay, I'll just differentiate real quick. So you don't want me to tell you if it's from my perspective, if I think the Christ can do that and that I can do that. You're talking about what's written in the text.
Right. I'm just doing an internal critique of the Bible itself.
Okay. So caveat, I don't know half as much as you do about what's actually in the text.
No, that's not important.
Okay.
That's why I'm not asking that.
Okay, good.
I'm not even trying to ask that.
Okay.
I'm not asking you what's Mark 3:23. I'm not going to ask you that. Okay. So
then yes is my answer to the first question.
Yes. Okay. So I'm just going to make some bullet points, just some statements. Christ knows the full truth about God. Christ is trusted to judge a man's spirit. Christ argues with authorities, both secular and religious, to the point that they're so pissed off that they kill him, right? He lays dead 3.5 days. He is raised from the dead. And when he is raised from the dead, he testifies for 40 more days. The time of his total testimony is 3.5 years. Okay. Do you have any objections from what you understand? Or if someone wanted to write in the chat that some of that is inaccurate?
That sounds all
I would accept arguments.
Yeah, that sounds all familiar.
That is holy, crazy, super basic stuff. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, in Christianity, could that be describing someone beside Christ?
No.
No, absolutely. No Christian has ever argued with me. Now, I'm going to make a statement of where I got that description from. And when I do this with standardized Christians, you can see them sprint backward at 5,000 miles per hour, breaking the sound barrier twice.
Yeah.
Because that's how fast they're going to back up when I say the following. That's a description of the two witnesses of end times. I took that description only from that book. I didn't cheat and take it from other parts of the Bible. It has to be Christ. It can be no one else. So the question is, before we even get started into this, when is Christ? We have no physical evidence to the existence of Christ on this planet prior to now. Zero.
Yep.
You have hearsay. That's all you have. You have a book that describes it and no other physical evidence besides the book. And who says the book is right? Well, the book says the book is right. And that's circular reasoning. And it's the only evidence Christians have. Now, is the story therefore a lie? Well, that's the differentiation between the Christian and the Bible. Just because the Christian says it happened 2,000 years ago and we have no evidence to it, doesn't make it false. After all, you can describe to someone less experienced a future event that is your past. Now, to them, that sounds like revelation. To you, it's just a fact of life. Think about the first time someone told you about kissing another human, and it all sounded fanciful and impossible and crazy until you did it, and then it's just something you did. Okay, so it's just very much like that when it comes to revelation and prophecies. Okay. Yeah. All right, so what the Bible is actually necessitating is that Christ does happen, but Christ did not happen when the book arrived or shortly before that. That's just not when it happened. It's described as happening in end times. So when does Christ do his ministry, his 3.5 years? It's in the second half of end times. That's what the Bible is actually describing. And I've destroyed every argument that I've heard against this. And it's hilarious to pull this on Christians and just blindside them. I don't need to blindside you, but I blindside Christians all the time with this.
Yeah.
And you should watch them freak out. It's hilarious.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when is the Christ? The Christ is in end times. Are we near end times? Possibly. We'll know when the signs start.
Yes.
But it's also a necessity of the text that when end time starts, the Christ is an adult. And he's got to be, according to the book, he's got to be of preaching age, which is 30 through 60 years of age. Okay. So when it starts.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have all that. Do you see anything disqualifying yourself yet?
No.
Of course not. Okay. Because there is nothing disqualifying you yet. All right. So could it be you in that part of it so far? Yes. Totally could.
Because most of it hasn't happened yet.
Well, exactly. And it's not like you're dying tomorrow and you have no time to learn something else.
Yeah, yeah. So
you could increase in knowledge as these things begin, and you could become realized as the singular Christ, not as a group of people participating as Christ, not people doing good things that are godly things to help people be brought forward into the new paradigm. Any person could do those things.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think are the definitive ideas, the very definitive things that the Christ would have to be able to do that no one else could?
So it's interesting because since I've announced it on TikTok, I learned a bunch of new things that I think were important for the Christ. One is the Christ has to have some design of its mind and heart so that he willingly puts himself second or last, not naively, but with great wisdom to understand how the human animal works and how self-sacrifice and being able to sustain himself so well that he doesn't need to worry about himself, that taking care of others can be his full-time job, and he can truly understand each individual's plight and what road they need to take to get to the place that he is at currently. Like he needs to know the absolute path to that wisdom, no matter who the person is, what trauma they went through, what bad ideas they believe in. They have to be able to unlock the puzzle of each individual person, and they have to increasingly learn how to do that at a quicker rate. They have to do exorcisms. They have to be able to perform exorcisms out of people. And they must understand humans so fundamentally that not only do they never get upset with the person, no matter what they're doing to them, but also understand each mental illness, but not in the context of like Western psychology, in the unspoken language and art of understanding why things do things to people, the physiological response, the neurological responses, biological responses, and all those sorts of things. He has to be basically, imagine a super shaman who can look upon somebody and say, oh, okay, I can see that your father was absent, and therefore there's all these things going on with you. So these are going to create blocks to your own progress. These are going to create blocks to your own ability to accept this deeper wisdom. And like you said, Christ needs to know the true nature of God, the true nature of the universe, the true nature of Satan, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so what do you think would be some good ways to know presently at this stage whether or not a person was going to become realized in these things?
Well, so here's something that happened to me some time ago that I never got over it, and I always thought it was kind of strange. So in my context, one time I was out on our bar street where all the bars are. Mm-hmm. And we're going home actually, and there's this guy that gets sucker punched by this other guy. He goes to fight back on the guy, and the cops only see the guy fighting back. And they go to arrest this guy, and I run across the street, and I get in the middle of it, and I say to the cops, I say, this guy he didn't start the fight. This other guy right here sucker punched him, and so the guys, they're both drunk. So the guy I'm trying to defend is belligerent. The cop looks at me and says, if you don't get out of my way, I'm going to arrest you. And this isn't to say that I'm some cool person, by the way. There's a reason for all this. So I say, I don't get out of the way because I'm like, this guy doesn't deserve to be arrested. I'm like, he didn't do it. And so the cop threatens me again. And so I turn my back on the cop and get this guy to move away. And I said, I know what happened to you. I know this guy sucker punched you, but these cops aren't listening to me, and they're not going to listen to you. Better to walk away and eat it, man. It's just not worth it. I know you're right. So I looked in his eyes like I know he needed just somebody to confirm it. I got to go home. I walked back across the street, and the people I was with, my sister and her boyfriend at the time, says, why did you do that?
Because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, he is. You don't even know who that person is. And I said, you see that man is my brother, just as you are my sister. And so that's one thing that qualifies you, that there isn't even a question in the moment of whether or not you need to take care of any human being on the planet. There's nothing about relation. It's not about if you work with the person or not. You don't give your friends nepotism, right? Those types of things. Like there has to be this, you literally have to see every human being on the planet literally as your brother, sister, mother, father, uncle, aunt. I think that's a big qualifier. If you see somebody act like that, if you see someone act differently than that, if you see anybody who has any corruption or diversion from that method and from that philosophy, they're out. They're out absolutely, because they still have ignorance, and so they still have grace, and they can't be the Christ.
So I know that you're not horribly familiar with the Christian Bible. And of course, that would include the Torah, the Nevi'im. Also, Islam. Are you familiar with Islam?
It really just roughly. The most I know about Islam is their concepts on the demons and the jinn, because I actively, intentionally studied it because I knew I needed to understand my enemy, and so that's the most I know about the Quran. But
okay, I was going to ask the Quran itself, though. You haven't studied it.
Yeah, 1% of the Quran, 10% of the Bible, less than a 0.5% of the Torah, and maybe a little more of Buddhism.
Well, since I believe that all of these are one thing, it doesn't matter which one we refer to.
Yeah.
Is there some story that you know intimately?
Yes.
What is that?
The alchemical story.
The alchemical story. Okay.
Which, interestingly enough, doesn't speak in past, present, or future tense. It speaks in the now of becoming a Christ.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So of that, what does it describe as the one who has realized and has alchemically turned lead mind into gold mind? What does it say about that one?
So some of this will be my translation, and I'll explain when that is, and some of it will be direct text. Okay. One thing is called the merging of the merging of the man and woman, the great hermaphrodite. I'm sorry. And so what that basically means is the brain has to become 50% masculine and 50% feminine in order to understand both genders, but also understand the cosmic nature of gender and how the balanced forces and energies that defined all sexed animals is so well balanced that it creates a super consciousness. Another thing is to completely control all the light moving through your body. And what that means is to be absolutely present in control of every thought in your body. And as a result, you will be almost absolutely in control of every physiological response in your body, right down to actually taking over autonomic and parasympathetic responses in your physiology. To know exactly what to say always at the right time, whenever, and to be able to withstand the harsh truth of our existence, which is equal parts terrifying and exciting.
Okay, so you would have evidence of parasympathetic and autonomic functions being somewhat or fully in your control.
Yes. So yeah, so I sound like I can throw lightning out of my hands, but for instance, I do Reiki healing, right? So I can transfer energy to my hands and give that to other people. I've healed, like if people have migraines, if I'm on point, I can take the migraine away instantaneously. What else is another good one? I started getting, when I started meditating a lot, I get this ability to feel, even if there's like a drop of water in my bladder. I can decrease my heart rate quite well. I can increase it. If I go to bed at night and I tell myself I only need 2 hours of sleep, and I focus on that all the way, I'll sleep 2 hours and wake up fully awake. Like there's little things like that. And obviously I can't prove that to you right now. Like I can't grow a sixth finger or anything, but I do believe
I wouldn't ask you to rearrange your genetic material and make instantaneous growth of something that should take 7 years.
Yeah. So those are like the little things. Yeah, those are like the little things I can do. And then there's also like the Kundalini thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but yes. When I start to really get into it, this is when I'm like not smoking, not drinking coffee, nothing. These electrical impulses go completely up and down through my body, from the soles of my feet to the top of my crown. When I go to bed, I'm taken to these strange places, which when I describe it to friends who have taken dimethyltryptamine, smoked it, I'm having the exact same experiences. Before I even studied Buddhism, I was once taken to some place where there was a spinning lotus flower, and all of these symbols that represent each chakra were pounding into the lotus flower. This is before I even understood what Sanskrit was. I was later able to see the Sanskrit. So I guess those are some examples of some weird physiological, neurological things that I was able to do and even control in many situations.
Okay. All right. And what was the next thing you listed? You said autonomic functions, parasympathetic functions, and you said something else.
The merging of the masculine and feminine, having a deep wisdom on how genders work, both in the animal species, but gender as a more archetypal cosmic force of the universe.
I'm not sure how a person could show that they did or did not understand that at some deep level.
Yeah, besides anecdotal stuff, as far as me saying something,
that's what I'm thinking.
You know, like I lived in this world where, I don't mistreat women. I've never forced myself. I've never like wanted to or needed to, but it was because I totally understood where they were coming from, almost automatically, to the point where I lived in this bubble where I didn't even know it was happening at the degree it was. So when the things like Harvey Weinstein came out, and my sisters, my mom, whoever would tell me things that happened to them, or like ex-girlfriends or current girlfriends who had exes, I was completely shocked, because to me it was just common sense. Like it just didn't make any sense that a man would do that. And it was, I think, because I had this deeper understanding. But the same thing with children. Like it's like how a children needs to be raised by a man and a woman. I never had an issue you understanding the need to be nurturing to a child. Even as a man,
Right.
he's more about showing the child the nature of things, where women are there to nurture them in between the bruises and wounds they get from nature interacting with them. So I always kind of really
That as well,
understand
yeah.
that. Yeah, I understood that at kind of like a base level, but the alchemical process is still learning deeper that. But I guess those are my beliefs. But yeah, some of them are almost impossible to prove because a lot of it's anecdotal stories and beliefs from my point. Like if you ask questions about what it means and how it works, I guess I could go in. So the proof's in the pudding kind of thing where I can just
Right.
describe to you and if it resonates. But if I'm the Christ and it's resonating so high with me, it's not going to translate to people if they're not meant to understand it, I guess.
Well, I would agree with you that few people would understand a lot of what you're saying. I'm not arguing that, but and I want to keep going and see what your responses are, and then I have a challenge after all of that.
Okay.
Okay. So there's understanding of the physical reality, physics, that sort of thing. There's understanding of the human spirit. There's empathy for others. There is the idea of the group above self, very Spock-like, and there's understanding of deeper spiritual meanings from within ancient stories, and all that I think is very important things. I'm not saying they're not.
Yeah.
What do you think that leaves out?
Well, the Christ has to die, which is something.
Yeah, but I'm not even getting to that part yet.
Okay.
Now you've spoken some yourself about understanding of human nature, so far as like understanding body language and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you perceive that you have an unusual ability for that?
Yes.
An anecdote to go with that? I mean, I personally take people's testimony as evidence.
Okay. So, yeah, I can. If it's weird, I can see things in people's eyes, and so I can almost read when someone's agitated, when they're dealing with. But I can nail it down to the specific type of grief as well. I can see guilt. In fact, it scares the shit out of me because of the people I talk to. I have friends, when I look at them and I say something, a certain thing, I see the guilt in their eyes and I'm terrified because of the actual thing I'm talking about. And then I see the guilt in there. I can see the guilt and I'm like, oh no. Like
yeah, you did that, didn't you?
Like they betrayed me there. You know what I mean? And but I tell and the Lord says, don't dig. You already know. You just deal with it. Deal with it as if it was revealed to you. And so I can see guilt, I can see sadness, I can see anger. And I'm pretty good. Like I'll like if someone gives me and they're mad at me, like I said, you're pissed at me, huh? I was like, no. I was like, no, you are, and it's fine. We can talk about it, and then I'll have to dig into it. So, yeah, I can see it right down to the actual emotion. And this is going to go a little deeper. I can see when a spirit enters somebody. I can see there's something in the eyes that change. I could see.
You mean a spirit that's not them?
Yeah, mostly satanic. Sometimes I can see like angelic, like a good one, or when the Lord steps in, I can see that too. But it's more in the content of their words and the way they begin to speak. I can almost immediately know. In fact, recently I've had several conversations where basically I'm talking to someone, and like if it's I don't know if it's angel or the Lord's like, I am here now. You can speak to me through them, and I'll start to have a completely different conversation that they would never have ever. And I can ask particular questions. It's like that show Westworld, where if you tap into the robot, you can like read its files kind of thing. I talk to certain people who usually have a good relationship with God, and I'll begin to start asking them questions, and they'll say incredibly mind-blowing things to me, almost as if here's a couple more hints. Same thing with the genie. In fact, I've actually addressed genies, and they've taken over and spoke for the person. Like if I'll say something like when I know one's jumping into someone, I say, who are you? What's your name? And the person will say their name. I says, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the one with you. and they'll either bug like flip the fuck out and have a psychotic break that in that moment. That's happened to me. Or the big grin comes. It's like terrifying. It's like a smile that they physically could not have. And so then
it's like the manifestation of the character of the Joker coming out of a normal person.
Yes, that's exactly
very much like that.
That's exactly what it looks like. And so about 50% of the time they'll give me their name, the name of the demon. The other 50% of the time they'll just kind of screw around, but I'll use certain scripture, I'll use certain things I've done in the invisible world, like meditation type stuff, and I'll use names and concepts I've created, and you'll see their eyes get wide and whatever. One time I did an exorcism on somebody, and when the spirit came up, it like physically hit me. And all of a sudden I could see like kind of like the spirit world. There were small little spheres of like static electricity that were like a grayish blue. And you could feel as if all of the happiness was stolen from everywhere around. Right. So there's been a lot of those types of things. And like I said, these days I can pick up most of the time when it's a spirit and when it's just their anxiety. Right. So those are the ways I can differentiate emotion, and I can narrow it right down to the exact feeling, whether or not it's usually coming from them or whether or not there's a powerful force at work that's working through them.
Okay. So here's the punchline. I think everything that you've described shows a lot of honesty, empathy, humanity, openness, kindness.
Thank you.
And I really mean that. Is there anything that you just described that you think the average person could not do if they were open to it?
No, I think everyone can do it.
I'm convinced everyone can do it too.
Yeah, I think everyone
So
can.
what makes the hero special?
Because I'm willing to do it, and I just happen to be the first one to do it. Essentially, right? Oh, so I elaborate.
No, I don't think so, actually. I think there's always been people like what you're talking about. I think that's evident through the history of this planet that we have had. I mean, the monk sits out in public and pours gasoline on himself as a means of protest, catches himself on fire.
Good point.
Now that is an empathetic human who really wanted to make a statement.
And literally died for it. You're right.
And literally died for it in a very painful way.
Yeah.
Burned to death. Not easy. So what was that person less empathetic or less convicted or less compassionate? Or I mean, I really think that you have two options in these things. You're just butt naked crazy, or you have a lot of sympathy for other people and you're open to it, you know?
Yeah.
But I find there have been those kinds of people throughout history. Now they're not every other person. That's true.
Yeah.
Not everyone's that brave. Not everyone's that honest. Not everyone's that open. Not everyone's that loving. In fact, it's rare to find somebody brave enough to be that loving.
Oh yeah, especially in 2020. So
yeah.
So here's where I think, I guess it becomes different. And I'm really with you on that thing where you say there's something like an algorithm in our DNA and in time, which produces the Christ as a mathematical eventuality of our species. So there's that happening too, that it sort of has to happen because it's mathematically ingrained in us, because it is divined by those who we call the creator or creators, but also as a necessity of survival of the species, right? As things become so much more complex, lose our humanity for technology in the material world, one needs to stand up to remember the old secrets. And so I also see it. I see it there. I do see that there was one person that needed to be it. And I think that has a lot to do with, almost like I said, some sort of algorithm within the DNA that was also set about, like you said, by setting the 12 tribes, the intermingling, So it is a story that was written by our creators. I do believe that to be also the truth. But from a subjective context, I think many boxes have to be checked. For one, you have to be willing to literally die for everyone, as an example. But two, you have to be wise enough to know when that death is supposed to occur. Third, you have to have such an open mind about what's humanly possible that it transcends what we're limited by. So I think about the Buddhist monks a lot, actually, because they fit the description the best. Those ones that stay in the mountains in Tibet, those seem to be the closest thing. I'm like, I think about this, like maybe the Christ is in Tibet right now. Though I don't see them coming out here levitating, making an example, all that kind of stuff, like self-healing, healing people of all their wounds. I think the Christ will know exactly how to do those types of things, like raising Lazarus from the dead, taking blindness from people. And I think that the Christ will figure it out by being able to rationally, like to rationalize it with his own psychology and physiology, so that he actually instills hope or a real sound-based logic in how the human animal can physically do that. It's not enough to believe in it and have faith in it. You have to actually break your faith first and see that faith is a placebo effect, which is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we actually manifest the miracles through our belief. But when you understand that wisdom, it breaks your ability to utilize Christianity or Buddhism or any doctrinal way of doing it. And you have to actually build foundations from the bottom using logic of how a human being could physically in this material world manifest miracle. So the Christ actually has to know how to scientifically, rationally understand how a miracle works, why it works, how the DNA is involved, how the quantum mechanics are involved, and how neuroscience is involved. And like I've dedicated like 10 years of my life to understanding that, for instance. The Christ will know exactly why a miracle is performed in a logical way that any person of science will be able to say, wow, that makes perfect sense.
Well, let me ask you some questions about that. What is a miracle?
A miracle is something, I mean, there's lots of ways to say it, but I would say one way is when you shorten the time, shorten the perceived need for resource, and you shorten the space that something is needed to manifest in a normal material reality. It's almost like you put an exponent on the process of nature. So the miracle is essentially, if I were to be able to throw my hands and grow a small tree sitting in my hands in a pile of dirt, that might be considered a miracle. Although the only thing I've really done is shorten the speed of a natural process. And so a miracle is just using natural laws, but finding some sort of secret code or cheat mode in order to just speed that up or make resource from nothing. And so the reason I say you need to know quantum mechanics, science, and I believe I said biology, genes, genetics at a fundamental level is because, for instance, how Christ, I believe, will do these things is he'll have an intimate understanding of how quantum particles work. It's the only way you could do this. It's because you'd have to undo atoms, take the subatomics, and then reconnect them in new material form. Light is at the heart of what we call time. And so the Christ will have to be able to slow down and speed up light using their mental faculties, for instance.
So that's basically everything you just said. I could, and if I'm saying this poorly, please correct me. Everything you just said there was manipulation of physics.
Essentially, yeah. Because even the
understanding physics at such a level, well, it's still physics and chemistry. I mean, it's literally all physics.
Yeah, exactly. That was the point I was making too.
Okay, so if it's all physics and what you're describing is understanding of physics at such a level that you know how to manipulate them in certain ways, and it's not magic that you're describing, it's a great deeper knowledge is what you're saying. High science. Is that fair?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. So what kind of blindness or deafness or physical death could you speed up or slow down a process when that blindness, deafness, or physical death had already happened, what process could you speed up or slow down that would restore that?
So everything boils down, essentially, it can be argued, but not very well, to the transfer of light, right? Or the transfer of wave phenomenon particle, right? So there's that certain level with all subatomic
Because we don't know what light is. Let's be careful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like it's the transfer of light, for instance, that facilitates transfers of the 18 subatomic particles, 17 known. I think there is one more though. 17 subatomic particles, the transfer and movement and connection between all those things. So let's say, for instance, someone is blind because there's a detached nerve in one of the eyes and the blood vessels have basically decayed as a result of the energy flow not going through there. I believe personally that there's a language of the human species that transcends English, Arabic, any of that. In fact, Neuralink is studying this right now. Neuralink is studying how electrons fire when someone thinks Facebook, regardless of what language they're thinking of it in. And so they understand the bleep, blop, bloop, boop, boop, boop. They've been marking these patterns. That's like the human animal language. I think that you can take your energy, like, so I can do Reiki now where I think about it and my hands heat up super hot. People get blown away by it. That's a transfer of photons to my hands with thinking in my mind. On top of that, those are emitting frequencies. If I put my hands on somebody and I emit a frequency on their body, and that frequency, that's light. That's literal transfer of light. That transfer of light goes through the DNA. It's that the light goes through the DNA and actually starts telling it stuff. If there's a certain reverberation, like a Morse code, like do 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 do, you can activate at the cellular level the DNA and activate the nerve, because this is receiving and emitting frequencies too. You can speak that fundamental human language and tell the body to do whatever it is you want it to do, like regrow this nerve, regrow these blood vessels. So what I do when I work with somebody is I'll do Reiki healing, but then I'll say you have to eat this food, that food, and this food, because I know there's also constituents, amino acids, and all that kind of stuff that are going to build those.
You need resources, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's essentially how, like for instance, you cure blindness is literally God. The Father has to be there with you. By the way, you say, God, give me the strength and the energy and the wisdom to take this blindness away from this person, and He will work through your energy, that human animal language. All I have to do is clear my mind completely as much as I can and only think to relieve this person of their blindness. I don't even have to know exactly how the physiology works, because that person's body, their subconscious brain, remember, we're dealing with the most powerful supercomputer ever that we know of. All you have to do is think that thought, and they have to think it with you, and your brain does the rest, because your brain and your body knows itself so well. It knows exactly what's wrong all the time. It doesn't know it in English. It knows it in that very fundamental human animal language. And so there has to be this, like I said, a quieting of the mind, working with the Lord, and both people have to have their mind on the same thing. As the Father says, when two are in the room,
two or more meet in my name, I'm there. Yeah.
So that's how I think it works. So there's that one side, the religious explanation. The Father says, two or more with me, I am there. And then there's also the scientific side. I do believe that it's a transfer of photons. And that's why I used to call my school thing the Master of Light. Because the idea is we just have to master photon transfer, and that is how we can perform miracle.
Okay, so let's say that I got film footage of this.
Yeah.
And let's say it wasn't something that took, 5, 6, 20 sessions, but just one session.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say a person was completely medically blind because of, I don't know, optic nerve damage due to a fungal infection. That happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And the fungal infection was gone. They'd taken the correct medications, etc. But the damage was still there, and they literally could not see anything. And let's say that I got film footage of this, and they regained their sight in just one session, or 2 sessions, or 20 sessions, or 50 sessions, or whatever. It doesn't even matter. How many people viewing that who didn't already think this is possible would become convinced due to that film footage?
As long as they thought that the film footage was legitimate and it wasn't doctored or screwed.
That's already believing it.
Okay, yeah. So I think it would be undeniable that they could.
Do you think people would deny it anyway?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, of those who didn't already believe these things are possible, and say that that's 50% of the population or whatever, and they don't think that's possible. How many do you think, expressed as like a percentage, just talking about human nature here, would see something like that, believing it can't be true, and that would convince them?
Are we talking also people that would engage in self-denial, even though deep down they knew they would?
They do.
So they know they do, even if they're engaging in self-deception.
I mean, my point is, no one watches Penn and Teller and thinks that a rose painted on a canvas bleeds.
Yeah. I would say very small. I would say single-digit percentages of people.
Yeah, I would say a small. There would be some. There would be some who would become convinced by that kind of thing. Okay. Yeah. But I mean, we saw very realistic-looking Tyrannosaurus Rex and other such velociraptors. On a movie. They look just as real as you. Mm-hmm. Are they actually real? Well, we're pretty well informed that these kinds of things can be faked. So, the example of the faith healer on television is no example of anything to anyone but the believer.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So a believer, someone who already thinks that what you're describing is plausible in reality and happens in reality, would see something like this and say, this is one of the practitioners of reality. Do you need to tend to something?
No, it was just outside. I think a car almost hit another car. Basically.
Was that a screeching tire thing? That's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
That's, well, I pray for them. But, okay. But it wouldn't do much to convince someone who wasn't apt to believe it.
Yeah, no, and you could even question the people that did believe it as maybe just being naive and they would be tricked by anything anyway type thing. You might just get those people who could have, if they see a UFO, no matter how the video looks, they're like, oh my God, that's actually a UFO.
Yeah, that's an alien. It's got to be an alien because I can't identify what it is. Yeah. Which makes no sense in reality, and you and I agree on that. But, okay. All right. So, I think it would be true that if a God existed, they would give some amount of confirmation to the already believing, especially when the believing need the confirmation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. But the overall point in creating something that is miraculous is to make the non-believer a believer. Okay. Is the act of giving that person sight miraculous to the observer? Or is it only miraculous to the immediate happening and what people would know that it happened in personal context and believe it? You see, my point is it doesn't make a larger story. You're muted right now. You're muted. And I didn't even do it to you. There you go.
You might imagine what I'm doing right now. I didn't want to take a break. Sorry, folks. This makes
that's fine.
Inappropriate.
Well, I don't really care. I think that we're all human beings, and
exactly.
if you don't know that people have bladders that get full, then I don't know how old you are. 2 months?
Ooh.
Yeah. So
we just got to know each other a lot better. So yes, I agree with you. It would only.
I don't really think so.
Yeah. It would only matter to those, like you said, that are there in that moment, especially the one who it's being performed on. Besides that, nothing.
Okay, so why should I think that the miracles described in the Bible are physical healings? Why should I think that?
Well, you shouldn't necessarily, right? And so I guess the reason I took that trip for a long time is because, well, water to wine one I always question, but the healing of the blind, the being able to make go blind, the raising of the dead, and this idea that I've heard this a couple of times from people, and I was so interested in it that multiple people have said to me recently, is like, I just need to see a miracle. I'm like, why do you need to see a miracle? It's like, why would you need that? Why aren't you just motivated? He's like, because I feel like it would literally reset my mind and give me hope for the world again. And so that's when I started to really dive in and say, maybe the miracle isn't, it isn't for its own sake. It isn't for healing the blind person. It's for resetting someone's neurology, like putting a fresh pack of snow across the brain to sled new slopes, to think in new transcendent ways. I do think that not all the miracles that are described in the Bible are literal physical miracles, but I do believe that Christ will perform miracles as a necessity to literally reset someone's mind away from the dogma that has been completely entrenched in their brain.
Yeah, I think that helps the individual, as I said. But I don't believe that helps the non-believer who's a skeptic.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And that's definitely the larger group by a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So the larger miracle would be convincing a skeptic. It wouldn't be testimony to the individual who was healed and their immediate family. It wouldn't be that smaller group. That would be the smaller miracle.
Yeah, that would take the Christ 10 lifetimes to get everyone. Like if you'd have to do it. Unless
it was a very, very specific situation, in which case it might not. Yeah, but okay, so all right, so since it's true that quote unquote witnessing a miracle is not necessarily persuasive to an individual, and why Penn and Teller are not thought of as gods, and that the larger purpose of the miracle, the larger group that can be helped, is not the immediate person or their immediate kin, but the witnesses that would be convinced by the miracle if the miracle were persuasive. Okay, so tell me, from your understanding of ancient texts, would you tell me what the word veil means in reference to a human being?
Within like the ancient texts and a more spiritual, mystical.
What you're going to say is perfect. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the veil is that thing which separates us from the truth of what's really happening here.
Okay. So the veil or curtain in the story for the Christians is torn asunder.
Yes. Yes.
And it's sometimes called the veil, and it's sometimes called the curtain of the temple.
Or the wall of Jericho.
Or the wall of Jericho. That's also another expression that's saying the same thing. That is, the truth has been hidden from us and is revealed. Okay. Now, is there a physical veil or curtain or wall?
So I think it's going to be twofold. I think one, it's going to be the entering of the actual physical spaceship heaven.
I believe so too.
You've really convinced me of that.
Minds.
Yeah, if you really convinced me of that. But I also think that Shaitan works in a slice of the dimension of reality that's not normally seen, as they say in Islam, the genie lives on the edge of fire, which what I think that means is it lives beyond violet light, and it lives beyond red light into ultraviolet, infrared, and so on. I believe somehow that place where we stop seeing things is going to be shifted, possibly on both sides of the visible light spectrum. So we're going to see more of reality due to our pineal glands. And so the veil will like a non-physical veil will be lifted, and we will see the spirits, so to speak. And I think maybe that has to do with what UFOs are, what the aliens, fairies, Bigfoots, all that weird shit. I think that's actually going to be a part of all this, is that the veil will be open. How it's going to happen, I'm not sure, but I do believe people are going to see things that we had no idea existed. Heaven will come down. And to go back to another question you have, I think I agree that it's not going to be enough for the Christ to perform miracles. Those in charge are going to have to ordain the Christ in front of the entire planet and say, this is the person that you're going to have to learn from. There's no other person, so y'all better get working and get to this person and open your ears.
Yeah, I believe that's true. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out, since the larger miracle would be changing minds and not giving someone who is deaf hearing physically, but giving someone who is mentally deaf the ability to look at it in a new way so that they can understand it.
Yes, okay.
And if that's true, that would explain why the hero always ends up in a fight with leadership in the area. That's one of those universal things of the hero.
Does that happen throughout the hero's life?
Rebel. What's that?
Does that happen throughout the hero's life or just at the end? Do they describe it?
It's in the hero's time of discovery that happens.
Okay.
It's one of the challenges, one of the trials of the hero.
Oh, wow. Okay. Makes a lot of sense.
Okay. So yeah, it really does to me. Okay. So specifically in the Christian text, which is, I'm not asking you to be familiar with the text. I'm asking you to use logic in the moment.
You got it.
Okay. So, I mean, I don't really care if you know the text or not. It doesn't really matter. But if the text is going to claim that Jesus was the first begotten of the dead, but there's nothing in the story that's saying that he died, then what could the term the dead mean? It doesn't mean he was physically dead. It doesn't mean that.
Yeah. So my belief on that is, because I feel like I've lived that, there's a true religion. There is a true one God. And I think we've all forgotten and or become disconnected from what all that is. And that makes us dead. That makes us mundane, engrossed to the material world. We have actually not severed because it's still connected, but we completely blocked or clogged our real deep understanding of the mystery of the universe, the nature of the universe, the original religion, and true one God. And so the Christ lifts the veil, or has the veil lifted, and reconstitutes that intimate relationship with the Lord. And so they are reborn mentally, spiritually, emotionally, the whole body experience, however you like to call it. That's what I would say.
And I'd like to assert that that's the greater transformation. I mean, after all, I could be missing a lot of my physical body and still go through that transformation.
Yes.
I could be a quadriplegic.
Yes, absolutely.
And become an ascended being.
Mm-hmm.
It really has nothing to do with my physical body at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, it has everything to do with the mind. And, the mind has certain physical minimal requirements. I understand that. You don't want to stuff Twinkies and cigarettes all day long every day. That's not good for your brain.
No.
But on the other hand, I think there's a pretty easy to maintain minimal where a person can function relatively highly, especially if we compare ourselves to other mammals on this planet. Pretty easily, you can be higher functioning than that.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, as the hero of the story, and I want to speak in general enough terms, as the hero of the story is ascended or born out of the dead, quickened is another term, or enlightened is another term in some different religions. That obviously is not about a physical thing, but is about a spiritual thing. Why should I think that, since in the case of the hero, that's the larger thing to overcome, why should I think that in the rest of the miracles, it's not talking about spiritual things?
There would be no purpose to a simply physical transformation of a person on this planet right now. What we are lacking in our species civilization is wisdom, is our hearts. We're like babies with nukes, right? That's the issue. It's not, we're not physically incapable, right? We found all sorts of health care technologies to transcend our physical power, AI, robotics. We are not lacking the physical department. A transformation physically of any human being would just basically put it at par with any of the highest technologies, right? If it could fly and shoot lasers out of its eyes, it'd just be like a jet plane, right? So there's nothing special. There's nothing transcendent. This whole thing is about discovering the piece of code that needs to be installed in the human civilization in order to transcend our own suffering, our own violent nature, our self-destructiveness. And that's a matter of the heart, a matter of the spirit. It's got to be something that we don't have yet that transcends our physical, visible reality, because we have access to that. And we're very innovative, and we've come up with all sorts of technologies, and nothing has helped us so far. That's what I would say. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question?
Well, it makes good sense to me, and I think it does answer the question. But if it's not about technology, isn't that what you said before, that it would be about understanding of technology, understanding of physics, and being able to bend them to their limit, so to speak?
So I break this down in three modes. So I believe that there's three types of magic or high science. I like to use the word magic because it's fun. There's technological magic, there is spirit magic, and then there is soul magic, or high science. Technological high science is like cars and spaceships. Okay, it's the manipulation of material elements to organize them in such a way that you produce some sort of powerful result. Spirit magic is using shaitans to enact miracles into the world. Soul magic is connecting directly with God, cutting out the middleman, whether that be Krishna, Beelzebub, whoever, and actually performing the same types of high science miracles with a deeper transcendent wisdom of the human animal. So although it's kind of like a technology, it's a technology that is connected deeply just to what you are manifesting as in your own personal experience. It doesn't require hammers and all that. I think that's why it says Solomon's temple was not built
with hands.
With hands. Jerusalem
Right.
was built in the invisible world first. I think there's this third type of technology that transcends physical manipulation and transcends your pentagram circles, where you basically call upon archons or shaitan.
Okay. So if all that is true, how do I know which way to read what miracle?
Yes. Okay. So
because now it's a problem of context.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of time it's going to have to be a deep investigation of the person, and a deep investigation of where the person's getting the information from. This kind of goes back to the evil auntie versus the mom, right? The mom makes you food and is okay with you never eating it or consistently turning it away, where the evil auntie will start to get perks and ticks about it. You can do the same thing with the person. You have to have a vision for the content of the character. I think maybe there's some good metaphors in the way we witness the Antichrist and the way we witness the Christ, right? Like what kind of characteristics will the Antichrist have, right? And they say there'll be false prophets and all this. Like I said, you probably have a much deeper interpretation of this, but I do believe people will begin to perform miracles. They already have been, possibly, and they'll be able to do it more and more, except they will be utilizing sometimes darker energies. We do that by understanding the miracle and understanding all the implications of the miracle, past, present, and future, and understanding the content of the person's character, and also a deep investigation into where they're getting information from and what the characteristics of that spirit are. So it's going to take a lot of discernment. I do think that we'll be able to eventually develop a better vision for this to see it at face value, but it takes a lot of work. For instance, like I have a friend who can almost hear my thoughts. Like I'll think something very specific. She'll message or call me and say, stop thinking this specific thing about me. But she also just happened to very recently start working in black magic circles. And so I wonder if she's receiving this because it's some sort of spirit that can hear what I'm saying and tell her what I'm saying, that sort of thing. A lot of
it's certainly. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I thought you were done.
The last thing I was going to say is then she started doing really weird things, like sharing videos with me that were very violent and saying, "Oh, isn't this cool?" It was very violent, like self-deprecating to people, and so I saw that her behavior changed in a very negative and kind of violent, anti-human way. And so those kind of things, I guess, is an example in my life.
I think in dark magic, people have given themselves permission to think that sort of thing, and it's encouraged.
Yes.
Not that I think magic is real. I don't. But that doesn't mean that people aren't affected by how you are, how you assert yourself, your level of confidence, body posturing, and lots of other things. And people who claim witchcraft, especially negative witchcraft, can be very confident and seem very, very assured, and people trust that, and they're influential in a small environment. Although all that's off topic, and I'm sorry. So I think I need to recollect myself. Give me a moment.
Yeah. Would you mind if I spoke a little bit on some anecdotal things?
Please, floor is yours.
Yeah. So as you're brainstorming, I'll just give a reason why I actually decided to even take the shot at this. It started when I was about early 20s. I had a very strange experience in my bedroom. I was laying in bed, I was dreaming, and I was driving on a highway in California, and I drove past that iconic church that was turned into a Luciferian church. It was once a church of like Christianity, and then it became a church of Satan. And as I drove past it in the dream, I heard Hotel California, which is allegedly a song about that church. It says we haven't had that spirit here since 1969, about the wine being there. And they say that's the year that church was changed over, the spirit, wine, Jesus. I woke up, but right before I woke up, I said, wow, the devil's in my room right now. It was weird. I woke up and the door was shaking violently. There was no one that could have done that. I'm staring at it, and I looked at it. I'm like, I'm not going to open the door. Not sure what to do. I'm kind of nervous, but I'm also don't think it can do anything to me. I pray to Jesus, and I say, Jesus, this is when I was still very much believing that Jesus Christ had already happened. He's a spirit that protects us. Jesus, please, do something about this. And I said it much nicer. But then he says to me, I'll take care of it this time, brother, but you're going to have to be the one to do this. I wasn't thinking that. I had no desire or belief that I was going to be this person, right? I thought Jesus had it covered, right? And he said that. And I was like, okay, I'll think about that one. And I ignored it. So then there was another night talking to a friend, very down on his luck. His mother died when he was young. He didn't really understand how to be with women, socialize with women. Very much like a man going his own way type of thing. He had a lot of resentment for the world, especially for women. He's really complaining one night a lot. And I say to him, James, you're the savior of the world. You're the Christ. You have to do something about all the things you're complaining about. It's not going to do anything. And in that very moment, the only time I've ever heard an audible voice outside of my body that was disembodied, had no body, says, I will cut out your tongue. And so I said to my friend James, I said, James, that's the most important thing I've ever said to you. Immediately something hit me in the middle of the chest that made my whole body shiver. I didn't know, I couldn't stop. I developed anxiety that wouldn't go away for I don't know how long. And my hands went ice cold. When I went home, I put them in a stove, or not in a stove, but outside of a wood stove. They would not get warm. Yeah, I didn't put them in the stove, right? It wasn't that cold.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't get warm. And then I started getting visited by these strange creatures in my dreams that looked like what you guys would say is the gray aliens, except there was 4 different species of them. Very much different, had different personalities, and all the time it happened after this one moment. So there was a lot of terrifying things they did, but there was this one spirit that would come to me, but they'd never show their face. Maybe they didn't have a face. Next thing that happened to me was I was in a dream where I'm walking through the Amazon, from what I believe. And we're on this, and this guide's explaining to us the nature of reality. And so the guide says, every 1,000 years or so, he might have said 2,000, but every eon is basically what he said. A man comes and saves the world. And my girlfriend at the time was in the dream, and she looks back immediately and goes, it's you. Dream's over. Again, I'm like, okay, young guy, hero complex, not a big deal. That was a fun dream. 2 months later, I'm in a dream and I'm going to a rave, a party in a basement, but I'm looking for Christ, for Jesus. I go downstairs and I talk to the door guy and I say, I'm looking for Christ. Has he been here? He looks at me wide-eyed and terrified and says, you're the son of the Prince of Darkness. And he slides a key to me and the whole room's red in this basement. And he goes, ayahuasca. Didn't even heard of the word ayahuasca before that. I search it, find out there's a special drink. So I'm like, I guess I have to go, because the second dream was so scary, right? The first one was, oh, that's fun. I'm the son of man, whatever. The second one was like, if you don't pursue the first dream I told you, you will become an absolute monster and destroy everything. So I go to the ayahuasca retreat in Peru, and they basically tell me everything about how this works, what I need to specifically do. It told me the exact people I needed to get out of my life, the people I needed to apologize to, the people I needed to get an apology from, what future actually looks like, where we heal every wound with music, how our society could have gone. This showed me a four-dimensional snapshot of the human civilization if it took the right turn at what was around the fall of Rome, the Greco-Roman Empire, that there was another opportunity. And they said that opportunity was missed, but you have an opportunity again to do it, and you will be a person that ushers this thing in. So all these crazy stuff's happening, and still I'm denying it. And then people started to come to me. I had people come to me and said, you're the one. I was like, what do you mean I'm the one? It says, you're like the one that's going to do it. And I don't like, at that point, it was so deafening that I'm like, I guess I'll take a shot. Like it was just so much, and I denied it. I wasn't diving into it. I wasn't obsessed with it. I wasn't like, yes, I'm the chosen one. I pushed it away over the course of 10 years, and it was screaming at me to the point I'm like, and nothing else worked, by the way. Anything else I pursued in life, never, ever. It was always strangely sabotaged. And eventually I got the voice of God and it said, nothing. None of you know this is fruitless. You know none of this. There's only one thing I've called you to do. You need to stop ignoring it. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
So I'm trying to figure out how I could know the difference between someone who's intended to help, even in very, very big ways.
Yeah.
And really bring people to God, and really harsh non-believers to God, and the one that God chooses to be the sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like what's the defining point? What's the difference between?
So that's really where my story is now, right? So we talked a couple of weeks ago, actually, and I discussed this with you, and I said, I don't know. I don't know for sure. Besides that, I feel like that when we talk about that, when God speaks to you, it's not language here, it's language down here. Besides, every single day, they're like, hey, I have a checklist, by the way, of the things the Lord tell me I need to do to get to that point. And every day it's like, hey, you're not checking anything off the list. The time's shortening. I'm not rushing you, but it's very soon that you're going to have to do this thing. It gives me directions on who I should talk to about it, all this other stuff. But I get up every day saying, maybe it's not me. I don't have any desire to be it, I guess. And so where I'm at now is I don't know for sure, right? I've gotten all these weird things and I'm just following it as it is, and I'm following the directions. It's not going to be apparent until it's apparent, I think. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be apparent until, if it's me, I'm ordained, or the thing happens, or the miracle happens. Mm-hmm. All we have is the clues. And what I thought was interesting the other day, you said that Christ has 3 brothers, 1 half brother. The mom and one of the brothers will be harassed and attacked by Satan. I didn't
say the mom and one of the brothers. I said the mom and one of the siblings.
One of the siblings. Okay, yes. So I have a mom and a half brother who are both religious, and I have 2 sisters who aren't. And I just thought that was interesting. That's why I asked you about the brothers. I'm not saying that adds to
Right.
anything, but I thought it was fascinating that did happen. There was a couple other ones not coming to my mind now. But yeah, to be honest with you,
Do either or both of your sisters identify as male?
No, but they're both very masculine, like ridiculously masculine. Like it's like stupid masculine. Yeah, yeah. But they're both no. Well, actually, when my one sister was like a lesbian for a little bit. I'm not sure if that's a word that messes with the algorithm. She was lesbian for a while. She kind of jumps back and forth.
There's no algorithm reading this channel, bro. Trust me.
Yeah. All right. Good.
Seriously.
Yeah, my other sister absolutely is the man of the house, wears the pants, that kind of thing. But besides that, no, neither of them identify as males. But yeah, so it's inconclusive. It's more like the Lord told me when I quit smoking, when I stopped drinking coffee, when I stopped all the sugar altogether, and I get on a backpack and begin to walk. Like he means that physically, not figuratively. He says, you literally have to throw on that backpack that's got that 3 months of food, and you have to walk, and I will show you where to go, and you will preach, and you will start a church. Like, that's what he told me. And until all those things happen, I'm very much leaving a lot of this stuff ambiguous. And that's me. That's me not jumping to what I'm supposed to do.
I think that's the first time you told me the backpack story.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't remember you saying that before.
Okay, yeah.
But I would really encourage you to do exactly that.
Yeah.
I really would.
It's scary though, right?
That all depends. It wasn't for me. It was confusing for my loved ones, direct kin, people who were friends of mine, etc. It was confusing for them. But some really interesting things happened. I mean, I really recommend that if you don't have responsibilities like small children, if your children are grown up and you don't have responsibilities like you'll go to jail if you do. Don't do it if you'll go to jail for doing it. Don't do that.
Yeah. No strings attached over here.
Yeah. So yeah, if you've got as a friend of mine calls it ankle jewelry, and you're quote unquote on paper, don't walk away from your life and don't try it. That's a bad idea. Wait till you're off paper and off the ankle bracelet. But I really recommend it because what happened was, and I'm sorry, and I want to get back, but just real quick. I'll just say this real quick.
I'm glad. I'd love to hear your story.
I'm horrible at directions, and I don't know. Like, I only recently learned that north and south and east and west are odd and even numbers. I didn't know that until very recently. I know, like everybody knows that, but I didn't know that. But anyway, so I was at a truck stop and I'd written down the wrong name, the wrong road name for what I was trying to accomplish, which was come to Santa Fe, New Mexico. So I actually had written the wrong road name, and that road went north-south, not east-west.
Oh.
So I'm flying a sign I'm flying a sign at the truck stop. And this sign, if somebody like actually read it and tried to help me, would take me to exactly where I don't want to go. That's how stupid I am. And I did that for 3 days out of stubbornness, I suppose. And finally I gave up and I thought, well, I'm just going to give this over to God. I'm not even going to try. So I propped the sign up on the table where people can read it, right? And I just opened up a King James that this old lady, I didn't even own a Bible before that. This old lady gave me a King James. I opened it up and I just started really actually reading it. Less than 3 minutes of reading it, this trucker stops. I was at the truck stop for 3 days begging.
Wow.
Less than 3 minutes reading the Bible after I just gave up and surrendered to the totality that I can't make this happen. I've tried, guy walks up and he says, that's not a road, right? And I'm like, well, no, I didn't know that's not a road. I thought that. And he says, no. He says, where are you trying to go? I said, well, I'm trying to go to Santa Fe, New Mexico. He says, well, I can get you as far as Tennessee. I said, that's great, because it's a lot closer than West Virginia, which is where I was. But he literally drove me to Albuquerque because he wasn't just going to Tennessee. He was going past Tennessee and to the next neighboring town right next to Santa Fe, New Mexico. So actually, he brought me all the way here. I rode in his truck for 3 continuous days. He let me sleep in his bunk.
Wow.
We talked about God and religion and stuff like that. And then a local driver brought me from Albuquerque. I got here the same day that the big truck dropped me off. I got to Santa Fe the same day. Yeah. Why?
Amen,
because I gave up. I really recommend giving up. Not giving up like, oh, I've abandoned all hope, but surrendering like, oh, gee, I'm not in charge.
Yep.
Accepting that you're not in charge can actually get you really far, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. We're really used to being the coolest thing we know, but all that's off topic, and I apologize.
No, it's great, and like it goes back to leaning on the own understanding. And I get this every day. It's like the Lord's like, when are you just going to let me take the driver's seat, bud? Every day he says, just, I know it's scary. I know everything and everyone and every piece of news and every piece of media tells you the exact opposite. I know people are going to call you. You know people are going to call you a fool, and you may feel like a fool until you actually surrender. And then everything is going to unfold like magic for you.
You know, I'm recording this, right? And I'm going to play it back for you.
Yeah.
You know that, right?
Yep.
Okay, I'm just telling you.
Oh, yeah. And I have faith that you are going to hold me to it. And part of the reason I'm happy to tell you right now, because you will, and you'll remind me that I have no choice. I have no other choice. Every door is closing around me that has nothing to do with this. It's like the path is becoming absolutely narrow, needle hole. Nothing else I can do. It's a matter, I have no other choice. I have no other choice. I know it.
So here's the last question that I have for you on this particular topic for tonight.
Yeah.
I had to put those caveats in there. What is the difference between the body of Christ and the Christ?
So, I mean, from my own reading of it, this would be my own reading, I guess. The body of Christ could mean one, the physical body, or the body of people that believe in the idea of Christ. And Christ is also on one level could be conceptual, meaning the anointed one, aka the Messiah, right? Or that person which can truly look to and see God. And so besides that, I'm not sure.
I think there are many, to quote the Christian text, at first, narrow is the way that leadeth into salvation, and wide is the path that leadeth into destruction. I think that's true at first.
Yeah.
But Christians tend to take a statement like that and stretch it from eternity to eternity when it's a very temporal statement.
Mm-hmm.
And that temporal statement, I think, is true. But along with that, with the signs and etc., and people come to accept the new paradigm, that more and more people come to understand at a deeper level and start participating in it, and thereby become, quote unquote, the body of Christ, which is not the same as Christ, but someone who's acting in the name of Christ, yes, understanding at a deeper level, participating in really actually helping other human beings, which incidentally is freaking beautiful. Mm-hmm. Okay, it really is. But it still leaves the final question. What's the difference between the body of Christ and the Christ? And I will leave it at that question.
Okay. So I would say, in context of what you're saying too, is the Christ, for only Christ, the path is narrow. For only Christ, as he blazes the trail, it will be the most difficult thing, with great suffering, disconnecting from all things, social, monetary, everything. You have to go into the jungle, into the woods where people have never tread before. And so the Christ has to be the first one to walk the path to quote unquote heaven, nirvana, enlightenment, whatever it be. But once the path is tread, all people will be able to see that tread the path and how it goes, and they will be able to follow it. The body of Christ, the people who follow Christ, and therefore, like you said, it will no longer be narrow. It will just be the way.
Of course, most religions refer to this as either the undeveloped country or the wilderness or the desert. In fact, every time you read something that means wilderness, desert, or undiscovered country, it's talking about that path, including the story of Exodus, just by the way. Like every time, that's what it's talking about. And that's why the hero plays the part of Moses in Exodus and leads the people to the promised land. That's why that works that way. Just FYI.
Yeah, that's wild because I keep on being told by the Lord I need to go to the desert, and I've been taking that seriously. Like I go to like deserty places around here.
Like a physical desert?
Well, I don't think it's physical anymore. I think I thought it was physical, but he kept on saying you must go into the desert. But I also, on some level, knew that meant a place where I have to be absolutely alone and come to terms with the devil. And so the Lord said, basically, you have to go to that place where you will meet with the devil, and it'll be the scariest thing that ever happened to you. And when you make it to the other side is when you will actually become the Christ fully actualized. Also, I get wilderness and nature. And when I was sitting with my mother the other day, she heard the Lord and she says, "You are in your wilderness now." It's a metaphorical wilderness where you have lost everything, and you must find yourself with God with absolutely nothing like in your life. So the desert, it means like barren. The wilderness means to have nothing of society and people. You literally have to do the thing absolutely alone, knowing there's no one to call, knowing there's no one that can understand what you're saying. You have to basically face absolute insanity and the prospect of insanity. You will have no reference point. You will have no anchors. And that is how much courage you need to have, is you need to literally face physical death, a mental destruction by yourself with zero resources. And so that's the last message I was given.
I think that's all true and actually very, very deep and spoken of throughout these stories. Have you and I done the story of Exodus together yet?
Only in bits and pieces, but not in the full extent.
Because you're telling the story of Exodus. That's what you're doing. That's what you received in prayer.
Really?
Yeah, that's the story of Exodus. Like cut and dry, absolutely no doubt about it.
Wow. Yeah, because I mean,
a lot of people are unaware that the word Pharaoh in the ancient Hebrew actually means divider. It doesn't mean the ruler of a country. Not at all.
Oh, yeah. And you said the Pharaoh with the contempt when they looked upon Moses.
No. That's another reading of a that's talking about the hardening of hearts. But no, but the Exodus itself, the word Egypt means limitation in from the ancient Hebrew. It means limitation. It doesn't mean a place. Wow. It means being limited. So you're separate. What the story really is saying is you're separated and limited.
I swear I didn't know that. I swear I did not know that about the story.
I know, but I'm just verifying your prayer. That's what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that you don't know the Christian text well like I do, and you've admitted it several times, and it's obvious that you don't. I don't think you're lying. Yeah. There's evidence to that I'll bring things up and you go, well, I don't know that part. And, and it's not a matter of pride or something to be ignorant. But anyway, so the land that Egypt is in the text is kosmios, or the cosmos, meaning materialism or physicality. So what it's saying is you're separated and limited by your physicality. That's what it's actually. Okay.
Wow.
And then you cross the Sea of Reeds. Moses leads them out of Egypt, and they cross the Sea of Reeds. A Sea of Reeds or a swamp. That's what a Sea of Reeds is. It's a swamp.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to walk. There's nowhere to not walk. It's untraversable unless you wore snowshoes. And the whole point is you can't traverse it.
Yeah.
It has to be opened up for you, which is why Moses has to part the waters of the Red Sea. He has to make a clear path for you. You can't do it. You are trapped. Now you can see that there's the possibility of improvement because you've heard about it. Okay. But you can't do it yourself. It's just like anything else. When you're first learning, someone else has to teach you. That's just how it is. And until you learn, then you're going to be limited by your ignorance. I mean, that's just how it is. That's realism. That's how it really works with humans. And the desert that they go into is the desert of Maydown, which literally means to be discordant. Okay? That's the whole land. And then the specific desert they go into is the desert Agon, which is where we get the word agony, or to agonize.
Oh, yeah.
So you're discordant and agonizing because you're shown these new things, but you're following a pillar of smoke. That's the lies you've had your whole life. And a pillar of fire that represents the new truth that you haven't quite accepted. And somewhere along that journey, you're even going to say, I was better off ignorant. This is too much work.
I've been there 10,000 times.
And most college students quit at exactly that point.
Mm.
And those who go on, the college students who go on to graduate, they make their final arguments. Maybe that sometimes that's called a dissertation for a doctorates. Mm-hmm. Or it's the end of the course, and they're kind of chummy with the professor, but the professor knows the deal. They don't really become friends. But that's when they make the final hash out the last tiny bits of it. And then viola, graduation, that is the promised land, what you were promised in the first place by starting the journey. So the story of Exodus is exactly what you're describing. That, dude, I'm telling you, once I saw these stories, I did not woefully and slowly shed off my material goods and with great lumber and weight put a backpack on and walk out. Dude, I ran into that desert screaming and singing.
Yeah.
Because I know what's on the other end. Please put me in that desert. I want to learn. I'm ignorant. I know nothing. Please teach me.
Yeah.
And I really recommend it because I know it sounds crazy. It actually works like that.
Yeah.
Because you're a human being.
Yeah.
Yeah. So take that step into the wilderness. Find that narrow path. Go forth in celebration. Dance. Please. You don't know what lies ahead until you do. And I'm saying that to everyone, not, you've already recognized you've already been told these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And reaffirmed, obviously, through your interpretation of the stories. And I just wanted to add that one thing that, folks, get back to the Hebrew, get back to the Aramaic, or know someone that understands it there, because the stories are not being told correctly. Look, I'm
not
a
by
perfect
Christians.
example. Yeah, it's the wrong language. It's the wrong interpretation. It's none of it adds up for a reason, because it's the equation is incorrect these days. You have to understand what these words actually meant then.
And to wrap it up, Brother Iron Charioteer, would you please tell me the spiritual meaning of a volcano? Okay. So you're going to have to make some crap up now. It's not talking about a volcano. It's talking about ideas and learning. And it's just true of humanity. It's not even a miraculous. It's not even prophetic. In fact, human beings could have written that story, 10,000 years ago or whatever. It's just true of human beings and how we learn stuff.
And also, why would they be following a volcano? One, and I do know there is
because volcanoes travel. Darn it! Oh, that's right. They don't. Sorry, they're kind of stuck in one place.
Yeah, because it doesn't show a true north. I don't know if were they talking about Pompeii, like they were trying to find the city of Pompeii. You know what I mean? Like if we were to take it as a literal context, why was Moses in the Middle East using a volcano as a point of reference to get to a certain place? I know there are some volcanoes in the Middle East, but they're not very many. There's a small volcanic line there, but I don't know. I just don't see how that would lend to a completion of the story by following a volcano. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm not picking on Iron because I think he and I are at least friends, casually at least. I mean, I've got some respect for the guy. There was no Jewish exodus. We found groups as small as 10 crossing the Sinai, bro. There was no Jewish exodus. It's not what the story's about. It's just the claim of historicity of the text is unverified in all cases. We just have to accept that it's not true historically, but maybe that's just not what the stories are. It doesn't justify the actual history of the Jews. There was no mass slavery of Jews in Egypt. It's really not any of that. It's not even what it's about. But Iron, I would have a conversation with you, private, public, anything you like, anytime you like, that I can agree to if I'm not working. All right. So I've asked the questions that I thought were interesting or important, or maybe even hopefully sometimes both. And I'd like to hear your closing thoughts. Maybe, and I don't expect that anything that I said was in this moment indicative of my position on the matter, or confirming nor denying any kind of claim of anyone being either the body of Christ or the actual hero Christ. I don't think that's mine to do.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's, if I were the Christ, I don't even think it's me. I don't think at this point I'm even really supposed to announce it and ordain myself. It's a time will tell thing, right? And first, I just want to say, wow, lots of people here today. It's so cool to see everything growing and so many people talking in the comments. And maybe next time I'd love to, if we did a Q&A section too and got people involved, that'd be really cool. So thanks everyone for being here and being such a cool part of the conversation. Secondly, what I think is most important from all this, it has very little to do with who the Christ is, right? It's not it's a matter of glory or pride. It has to do with, we're obviously getting something wrong. We can talk all day about the advancements of technology, peaceful time in history, but we can also talk about global lockdowns right now. We can talk about our terror with climate change. We can talk about the political divide that's literally infecting the entire world right now. It's not just America, it's Israel, it's South America, it's all of Europe, it's China. All these countries are being diametrically opposed among their populations. They're still ravaging wars in the Middle East. We're getting something wrong. We have such a hard time talking to each other in a world where we are globally connected all the time by Wi-Fi. We have found more and more ways to hurt each other. The message across all of this is, and the reason I'm doing it, and I do wholeheartedly believe the reason I'm doing it is not for pride or glory, although sometimes I think it might be cool to be the Christ. The most important thing is there is something wrong here. And we haven't been able to figure it out for the entire course of human history. We've always been missing that little piece. And it is this deep love and admiration for each other as divine creatures, not just animals, as divine creatures worthy of each other's love, worthy of our own love for ourselves, and this transcendent idea that we could become greater than what we are now, and that the most important thing is our moral and ethical integrity in our pursuit of virtues like honesty, compassion, courage, temperance. We need a revolution of the mind, of the spirit, of the heart, which will inexorably lead to a revolution of the physical body. So whether or not you believe me or not, that's not what's important. The most important thing is to get up every day and look in the mirror and ask yourself, what if you were king or queen of the world? What if you were in charge and responsible for everything? How might you conduct yourself? Do a little experiment tomorrow. Get up tomorrow morning and imagine that you're the king or queen of the world. Not like everyone's going to serve you, but as if you are going to serve everyone else. Just play a little. Just see what that feels like. It'll be very strange and you'll thank me later. It's a very fun experiment. That's my closing comment.
Yeah, I do believe that the ultimate king will be the ultimate servant, because that's what a king is supposed to be. I really do believe that.
Absolutely.
So on that, I really agree. And besides that, if everyone just made a little bit of effort, even if they were crappy at it and didn't really know what to do, if they just tried.
Give it a shot.
If everyone was doing that, anyway, I'm not even going to go off onto that. Brother Iron, would you choose whether or not the Exodus happened? Because the statement, the volcano on Santorini, and there were two Exoduses, and that all makes sense within itself, but then saying even James Cameron knows the Exodus is false, is fake, is defeating. Just pick one. I'm just asking you to pick one. It happened. It didn't happen. If it did happen, it isn't what the story tells. If it's a story about people becoming more knowledgeable, learning through experience, I can prove to you that's true. If that's what the story's about. And by the way, all the words, I didn't go over all the words agree with what I'm saying. Every single one of them, not just the first 5. But we can have that conversation any old time.
And not to mention the context of what Jewish might actually mean, which doesn't necessarily mean an ethnic group, a specific religious sect that we would see today in modern times as a religious group. Jewish people, right. You would argue, and I would argue too, that Jewish people is just the people of God, or the people who see God, or the people who are connected to God. Jewish doesn't necessarily have to mean a religion, an ethnic minority, or whatever. It could transcend that into a spiritual idea, a spiritual Jewishness. So that's another argument that really brings into question this idea of a literal physical movement of an ethnic people.
My brother Titan is a funny guy. He said, "Oh, you don't want me to be king." Seriously, you don't. He's brilliant. I love picking his brain about matters of tiny objects. Really interesting stuff that guy has learned in his life. And Iron Charioteer, there were 2 real exoduses, but then that's what that actually is. If you look into the history of the actual Jews, the real history, not the biblical history. The Jews were nomadic warriors who were exceedingly violent and proud. And when they gained enough stolen riches, they stabilized themselves. And they got kicked out a couple times, but they just stabilized somewhere else and became a real larger society. But they carried that pride and prejudice and tribalism into their understanding of the religion when it was given them. Okay. So that's why the Jews read it like, oh yeah, we're the poo. They really did think of themselves that way. That's not a joke. Now, were they the poo? Depends on do you think that the Spartans were awesome? Do you like Genghis Khan? Because if you like Genghis Khan and the Spartans, you probably like the ancient Jews, because they were that kind of folks. Okay. Personally, I don't have respect for tribal, nomadic, warrior, raider types. I don't think that's beautiful in any way. I think it's living on the backs of others' work. I think it's theft. And it always is. Even when the United States in modern times does it, it's still theft. Okay. Let's wrap this thing up. Let's put a bow on this. Call it a night. And wow, we went almost like an hour and a half, hour 45 there, hour 0.75. So nice. Good enough, long enough show. But I want these things to be short enough to be digestible.
Absolutely.
So I think we covered that topic really well. I hope that everyone's walking away with something to think about. It sure looks from the side chat that you guys are thinking about things, and that is the best that I could personally ever hope for. So thank you, Megan Christ. Any last things you want to say before we wrap this up?
Thanks for having me again. Like I said, I'm so excited to see a lot more people here and having conversations. Even if it's, I might be a schizophrenic epileptic. I guess it's possible, but I never had any epileptic seizures. But sure. But no, it's been fun either way. The criticisms are more welcome than the agreements too. But like Richard said, I hope that it just has you thinking a little bit differently. At the end of the day, the situation we're in is great opportunity out of great crisis we're seeing in the world. This is the time we're the most vulnerable, but we're the most subject to possibility of changing things. When things are the most volatile, everything's jumping around. It is the greatest time to reorder things in society and civilization to perform better results in the future. Be a part of the new laying of the foundations of a better world for our society, regardless of what you believe in. If you think a crisis coming or UFOs are coming, it's not about necessarily having to be completely selfless. It's just about wanting a better world, wanting a more positive world where we can all connect and experience the heights of love and passion and excitement and personal purpose and all those things. Just Put something positive. Get up in the morning, spread your arms out, look toward the sun, not directly in the sun, and see the world as something like a game, like a journey, like an adventure, and get out there and do it.
Right on. Okay.
And thank you.
And with
again.
that, thank you. I appreciate our conversations. I'm sure that's not going to change. Until next time, guys, thanks for stopping by, everyone. As Megan said, I appreciate you coming by, having objections. I think the objections are more important than the agreeances, because no one ever learned from yes, that's correct. No one ever learned a darn thing from yes, that's correct. And everyone learns from no, that must be wrong. Everyone does. But you have to make a good case as to why it's wrong. Until next time, guys, thank you all for dropping by. And I want you all to know you have my peace and respect. And I really do look forward to the day that we're all great friends. Laters.
Peace.
Peace.